Hello guys, it's the Unclear 999. Today's video is about Genghis Khan, born Temujin on the harsh steppes of Mongolia in 1162, was not handed greatness. She carved it from hardship, betrayal, and the frozen soil beneath his feet. Abandoned by allies, hunted by rival clans, and born into a fractured world of tribal chaos, his early life was defined by suffering and survival. Yet within the boy burned a fire no defeat could extinguish. What set him apart was not simply his brutality in battle, but his relentless vision of unity, discipline, and purpose. While others saw walls between tribes, he saw a single nation. He saw order where there was none, and he imposed it with unwavering force. Genghis Khan built the largest contiguous empire in human history, not through luck, but through revolutionary military tactics, ruthless meritocracy, and a psychological understanding of fear and loyalty. He did not discriminate by bloodline. If you were strong, smart, and loyal, you could rise. His warriors rode like thunder across continents, coordinated like clockwork, devastating enemies who thought them mere. But there was more. He instituted laws to protect the weak, forbade the kidnapping of women, established postal systems, and demanded religious tolerance in a world consumed by division. His governance wasn't chaos, it was structure born from blood, loyalty forged in hardship, and power stabilized through law. To his enemies, he was a nightmare made real. To his followers, he was the Sky Father, the eternal ruler who brought stability to the steppe and beyond. In just a few decades, he transformed an outcast tribe into a civilization, his name echoing through centuries, not just as a conqueror, but as a force of nature. Genghis Khan was not merely a man, he was momentum, a living storm, a testament to the idea that the most shattered origins can give birth to the most unstoppable destinies. And yet, to understand Genghis Khan is to understand that conquest alone was never his end game, it was merely the tool. His warpath was not driven by bloodlust but by an unshakable belief that the world could be brought under a single rule, where loyalty was rewarded, where law replaced chaos, and where no man could rise above justice, not even his own kin. He reimagined leadership, turning nomadic horsemen into elite warriors with systems of discipline more advanced than the fractured kingdoms they faced. Under his command, tens of thousands moved like one body, communicating across vast lands through signal flags, horns, and an intricate relay system that outpaced any nation in the world. He built one of history's first passport systems, allowing merchants and messengers to travel safely across the Silk Road under his protection. Where cities once feared raiders, they now feared disobedience, because submission to Genghis Khan meant survival, prosperity, and order. But defiance meant extinction. Yet despite the destruction left in his wake, his empire was never built on mirage. It was constructed on structure, tolerance, and systems of administration that rivaled Rome and China. He was a paradox in motion, a barbarian with a vision for civilization, a nomad who dreamed of eternal rule, a destroyer who became one of history's most brilliant architects. In a time where leaders clung to privilege, Genghis promoted by merit, not blood. A blacksmith's son could command legions, a former enemy could become a general, and a slave could rise if they proved worthy. This radical concept of earned power turned his people into loyalists who fought not just for a man, but for an idea, the idea that destiny was not inherited but forged through will, and this will was relentless. He rode through mountain ranges, deserts, and frozen plains not because it was easy, but because no land was beyond the reach of a leader who refused to be denied. His enemies did not simply fall, they unraveled. Cities with walls centuries old crumbled before his siege tactics. Kingdoms that once stood proud with dynastic arrogance were reduced to whispers in the sands. But Genghis was not blind to consequence. He often spared those who surrendered, absorbed artisans, engineers, and thinkers into his realm, and protected the trade routes that would one day become the lifeblood of global commerce. He opened corridors between East and West centuries before modern diplomacy, linking civilizations through commerce, language, and postal routes that spanned thousands of miles. Under his rule, a merchant could travel from the Pacific to the Mediterranean without harm, carrying silk, spices, gold, and knowledge. Scholars, philosophers, doctors, and engineers passed safely through the empire's veins, guarded by the very horsemen once seen as destroyers. And in this grand vision, we see a leader far more complex than the myth of the sword-wielding savage. We see a man who understood humanity's contradictions and used them to his advantage. He ruled with brutal efficiency, but also with calculated mercy. He punished betrayal, but rewarded loyalty beyond measure. He destroyed cities, but only to build an empire stronger than any one fortress could hold. He did not just conquer land, he rewired civilization itself, showing the world that empire is not only about borders, but about belief. Even in dead, Genghis Khan was more legend than man, and perhaps that's exactly how he intended it. His final resting place remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history, not marked by grand tombs or monuments, but hidden by secrecy, loyalty, and reverence. It is said that those who buried him were killed, and those who killed them were also slain, until silence was the last protector of his grave. For Genghis Khan didn't seek glory in marble or gold. He sought it in legacy measured not in statues, but in systems, in stories, and in the unstoppable momentum he unleashed upon the world. And that legacy endured long after his body turned to dust. His descendants ruled over lands stretching from Korea to Hungary, from the Siberian forests to the shores of the Persian Gulf. The Mongol Empire under his lineage became a bridge between civilizations, forcing enemies to trade, compelling rivals to cooperate, and seeding a kind of peace. Mongolic that allowed the world to breathe and think and move across boundaries like never before. He created an empire where a shepherd in the Gobi Desert could wear silk from India, and a scholar in Baghdad could study Chinese texts brought across protected roads. His influence seeped into cultures, languages, currencies, and maps. And yet, the modern world often misunderstands him, reduces him to a brute, a destroyer, a name whispered in history books next to terms like barbarian and tyrant. But the truth is more complex, more staggering, more relevant. Genghis Khan was a disruptor of the old world, a force of nature that refused to obey the limitations of birth, background, or status quo. In an age where empires were built on inherited power, he built his unearned loyalty. In a time where religion divided men, he demanded tolerance. When others ruled by fear alone, he balanced it with strategy, law, and unity. And this duality, this ability to be both terror and hope, made him immortal in the chronicles of history. We feel his impact today in the concepts of international trade, postal infrastructure, battlefield mobility, and meritocratic leadership. His DNA flows through millions, his innovations inspired centuries of change, and his strategies are still studied by military academies around the world. But perhaps the most astonishing part of his story is not that he conquered more land than any man before or after, but that he did it while beginning with nothing. No empire, no title, no army. Just a boy exiled in the wilderness, betrayed by his own blood, hungry and hunted, scraping survival from frostbitten ground, and yet, from that void, rose a force that would shake the world. His story is proof that greatness does not ask for permission. It does not wait to be invited. It rises, breaks, and reshapes reality, even if the world refuses to believe until it's too late. And so, the tale of Genghis Khan becomes not only a chronicle of conquests, but a mirror held up to every generation that believes their circumstances define their destiny. For in Temujin, the boy who became Genghis, we find the blueprint of unstoppable resilience. Betrayed by allies, hunted by enemies, left to starve by his own clan, he could have vanished into obscurity like countless others, but instead he listened to the fire within, the quiet rage that whispered, "They will remember your name." That whisper became a storm. He didn't just gather men, he built believers. Men followed him not out of obligation, but because he gave them a vision beyond their daily survival. He united warring tribes by breaking the chains of aristocratic bloodlines and giving power to the capable. He established a codius that promoted order over chaos, loyalty over corruption, and duty above all. Genghis Khan's justice was swift, sometimes brutal, but it was consistent, which in a lawless world made it revolutionary. And he enforced it not with cruelty for cruelty's sake, but with the belief that the foundation of empire is not brute force, it is trust. He understood that laws are the bones of a nation and that trust is its heartbeat. In this, He was not merely a conqueror, but a founder, a legislator, and a philosopher in armor. And through all of this, through the battles, the betrayals, the blood spilled across continents, he never lost sight of the truth that the greatest empires are not built by those who seek to rule others, but by those who dare to rule themselves. His control over impulse, over emotion, over revenge, he took in knowledge wherever he went, learning from the Persians, the Chinese, the Arabs. He collected not just gold, but wisdom, not just territory, but systems. He was never afraid to adapt, to change, to rebuild from the ashes. And this is why his legacy endured, not just for decades, but for centuries. Because empires built on fear crumble, but empires built on innovation echo across time.